My darling philosophers, welcome to our daily devotional reading. I hope you are well. To those just dropping in, you are dropping into a devotional reading of Plato. We are reading through the collected works of Plato in 1 year, or in 365 days, because I am taking a break every now and then. Well, not that many, but some. Let's calm down, sink into the moment, or let the moment sink into us, which is probably just as true, maybe more beautiful, and maybe better, more good. Let the stillness hold you. Enwrap you, is that a word? Fold you into its presence, into the presence of being. Into the presence of seeing. There's a song in my head. It's a Christian song. This is not a Christian channel, in case you're just dropping in. Hold me close, let your love surround me. Bring me near, draw me to your side. And as I wait, I will rise up like an eagle, and I will soar with you. Your spirit leads me on by the power of your love. I'm blushing. On that note, let's read Plato. Socrates is telling the story of a meeting he had with 2 brothers to a friend of his. Neither I nor any other man foretell me now, Sisyphus, if you think it good. He's relating here the words of one of the brothers. Tell me, Sisyphus, if you think it. And I'm saying Sisyphus for those who don't know, because I can't pronounce the name that is written. Skesippus, it's close enough. If you think it good or evil for a man who is sick to drink medicine when he wants it, or to go to war armed rather than unarmed. Good, I say, and yet I know that I am going to be caught in one of your charming puzzles. That, he replied, you will discover. If you answer, since you admit medicine to be good for a man to drink when wanted, must it not be good for him to drink as much as possible when he takes his medicine? A cartload of hellebore will not be too much for him. It is a herb, I believe, which is either poison or medicine, as most herbs are, or many herbs are. Sisyphus said, "Quite so, Euthydemus. That is to say, if he who drinks is as big as the statue of Delphi. And seeing that in war to have arms is a good thing, he ought to have as many spears and shields as possible." "Very true," said Sisyphus. "And do you think, Euthydemus, that you ought to have one shield only and one spear?" "I do. I do." "And would you arm Geryon and Briareus in that way, considering that you and your companion fight in armor? I thought that you would have known better." Here Euthydemus held his peace. But Dionysiodorus, the other brother, returned to the previous answer of Sisyphus and said, "Do you not think that the possession of gold is a good thing?" "Yes," said Sisyphus, "and the more the better. And to have money," or the other translation, which will make more sense in the next few lines, says, "To have good things everywhere and always is good." "Certainly, a great good," he said. "And you admit gold to be a good, see?" "Certainly," he replied. "And ought not a man then to have gold everywhere and always, and as much as possible in himself? And may he not be deemed the happiest of men who has 3 talents of gold in his belly, and a talent in his pate, and a stater something of gold in either eye?" "Yes, Euthydemus," said Sisyphus, "and the Scythians reckon those who have gold in their own skulls to be the happiest and bravest of men. That is only another instance of your manner of speaking about the dog and father. And what is still more extraordinary, they drink out of their own skulls, guilt, not guild, and see the inside of them and hold their own head in their hands." The story goes that they actually drank from the skulls of their enemies. Probably gold plated. Maybe, I don't know. "And do the Scythians and others see that which has the quality of vision, or that which has not?" says Euthydemus. "That which has the quality of vision sees clearly." "And you also see that which has the quality of vision?" he said. "Yes, I do." "Then do you see our garments?" "Yes, thankfully." "And our garments have the quality of vision?" "They can see to any extent," said Sisyphus. "What can they see?" There's a lot of play on words in the Greek here, which goes a bit amiss in the translation. Then it's not clear who is seeing, the thing seen or the other one. "Nothing but you, my sweet man, may perhaps imagine that they do not see. And certainly, Euthydemus, you do seem to me to have been caught napping when you were not asleep, and that if it be possible to speak and say nothing, you are doing so." Bang. "If it was possible to speak and say nothing, you are doing so." "And may there not be silence of the speaker?" said Dionysiodorus. "Impossible," said Sisyphus. "Or a speaking of the silent?" "That is still more impossible," he said. I imagine he has not had a mystical experience yet. "But when you speak of stones, wood, iron bars, do you not speak of the silent?" "Not when I pass a smithy, for then the iron bars make a tremendous noise and outcry if they are touched. So that here your wisdom is strangely mistaken. Please, however, to tell me how you can be silent when speaking." I thought that Sisyphus was put upon his mettle because Clinias, his favorite, was present. When you are silent, said Euthydemus, is there not a silence of all things? Yes, he said, but if speaking things are included in all things, then the speaking are silent. What, said Sisyphus, then all things are not silent? Certainly not, said Euthydemus. Then, my good friend, do they all speak? Yes, those which speak. Now he is allowed to make the qualification. Nay, said Sisyphus, but the question which I ask is whether all things are silent or speak. Neither and both, said Dionysiodorus, quickly interposing. I am sure that you will be nonplussed at that answer. Here Sisyphus, as his manner was, burst into a roar of laughter. He said, that brother of yours, Euthydemus, has got into a dilemma. All is over with him. This delighted Clinias, whose laughter made Sisyphus 10 times as uproarious. But I cannot help thinking that the rogue must have picked up this answer from them, for there has been no wisdom like theirs in our time. One of my neighbor's alarms are off. Why do you laugh, Clinias, I said, at such solemn and beautiful things? Why, Socrates, said Dionysiodorus, did you ever see a beautiful thing? Yes, Dionysiodorus, I replied, I have seen many. Were they other than the beautiful or the same as the beautiful? Now I was in a great quandary at having to answer this question, and I thought that I was rightly served for having opened my mouth at all. I said, however, they are not the same as absolute beauty, but they have beauty present with each of them. And are you an ox because an ox is present with you? Or are you Dionysiodorus because Dionysiodorus is present with you? God forbid, I replied. But how, he said, by reason of one thing being present with another, will one thing be another? Is that your difficulty, I said, for I was beginning to imitate their skill, on which my heart was set. The other translation has, I was so eager to have the wisdom of the pair that I was already trying to copy it. Of course, he replied. I and all the world are in a difficulty about the non-existent. What do you mean, Dionysiodorus, I said. Is not the honorable honorable and the base base? That, he said, is as I please. And do you please? Yes, he said. And you will admit that the same is the same and the other other, for surely the other is not the same. I should imagine that even a child will hardly deny the other to be other. But I think, Dionysiodorus, that you must have intentionally missed the last question, for in general you and your brothers seem to me to be good workmen in your own department, and to do the dialectician's business excellently well. What, said he, is the business of a good workman? Tell me, in the first place, whose business is hammering? The smith's, and whose the making of pots? The potter. And who has to kill and skin and mince and boil and roast? The cook, said I said. And if a man does his business, he does rightly, certainly. I was just thinking that it was probably difficult to follow who is exactly speaking, because the method of the two brothers is so similar to Socrates'. And they're questioning him at this stage, while usually he's the one questioning. And if a man does his business, he does rightly, certainly. And the business of the cook is to cut up and skin. You have omitted that. So the Greek here, again, I read, and the footnote of the other is possible to read as it is good business. The business of the cook is to be cut up and skinned. Can also be in the Greek, apparently. Yes, I have admitted that, but you must not be too hard upon me. Oh, I only have 2 lines and I'm already done almost. Then if someone were to kill, mince, boil, roast the cook, he would do his business, and if he were to hammer the smith and make a pot of the potter, he would do their business. Poseidon, I said, this is the crown of wisdom. Can I ever hope to have such wisdom of my own? And would you be able, Socrates, to recognize this wisdom when it has become your own? Certainly, I said, if you will allow me. What, he said, do you think that you know what is your own? Yes, I do. Subject to your correction. For you are the bottom, and Euthydemus is the top of all my wisdom. Is not that which you would deem your own, he said, that which you have in your own power, and which you are able to use as you would desire, for example, an ox or a sheep? Would you not think that which you could sell and give and sacrifice to any god whom you pleased to be your own? And that which you could not give or sell or sacrifice, you would think not to be in your own power? Yes, I said, for I was certain that something good would come out of the questions which I was impatient to hear. Yes, such things and such things only are mine. Yes, he said, and you would mean by animals living beings? Yes, I said. You agree then that those animals only are yours, with which you have the power to do all these things which I was just naming? I agree. On that cliffhanger, thus far our scripture of the evening. I feel a bit of confusion. Okay, cool, I can work with this. I couldn't help but see in the play with words that the brothers are, every time I see something like, and that is probably not their intention, and most likely not the intention of Plato, not that I presume to know what Plato's intentions were. But I can't help seeing something mystical in this play with words. And what I was thinking as I was reading here, and I think I've said that, now that I've mentioned it, I think I've said it before, is that whole throwing someone in confusion, disrupting their normal ways of seeing, of being, so that they might have an insight. The first thing that I wrote down today is knowledge of good and evil. What is good and what is evil? That's kind of what the passage starts with, or a certain demonstration of it at least, in the sense of medicine is good, yes, but how much? As much as possible. And then he lists a number of things that's good, but to what degree? And we see here why knowledge of good and evil requires wisdom. Because it's not as if it can't be just a set of rules. It's discernment. It's phronesis. Knowing what is required in this moment and to what extent. Not too much, not too little. And if I just think of how I might have been able to do better at the ritual, I should probably not talk a bit less of that. That was one of the lessons that I've already received. A little bit of mystery is good. I'm not very good at that. I like to shout things from the rooftop. The only way I am good at that is that I forget to say things, or that I have the theory of mind of a 4-year-old. And so I just assume everybody knows what I know. But anyway, if you pay attention, I know, I've said this before, keep coming back to it. But how on earth are you going to read the moment? What is required? The finesse. I remember once I couldn't get this word, the finesse that Pascal talks about, Blaise Pascal. How are you going to acquire that finesse if you don't pay attention? And hence, growing up and paying attention is necessities for knowing the difference between good and evil and the different degrees therein. You're not good if you are naive. I forget his exact words. I'm quoting the guy who wrote his Dark Materials. And I want to add, you're also not good if you hide behind someone else's offering, sacrifice, blood. Talking of the good being not naive, I finished this book. Luckily, I waited with like the last 20 pages or so until I was home, because I was reading on the plane there and back again. Both Rebecca and Paul read it, loved it, but they both said they prefer Blood Meridian. The only thing I got, no, not the only thing, but one of the things that I wrote in the back is thinking of folly. Behind that bright smile lies a shitload of darkness, it seems. He thinks this is hopeful. But I see that I wrote that like in the beginning of the book. I enjoyed the idea of carrying the fire, which is of course Prometheus. The irony, no, ambiguity almost, I think, is, well, it will not said exactly what happens, but there was a bright light that caused everything. So it is both the fire that destroyed and the fire that contains, what's the word? Not continues, but that's not the word I'm looking for. Conserve. Preserves. The fire destroys and the fire preserves. Carries. Carrying the flame. And apparently there was a famous book on space travel about it, had the name of Carrying the Fire. But I think it might have been written after this, I'm not sure. When I googled it, this book was what the meaning was related to, connected to. And then I also wrote a little later, bright eyes without darkness behind it is shallow, and we shall not have shallow in this make-believe monastery. Oh, and I wrote, but it sounds different than what I meant, because Rebecca and I was, of course, also talking about religion. And I asked her at one point, but where's God in this? And I can't remember her exact words, but it boiled down to not. And then I guess in a moment of darkness I wrote, what this godless world needs is a godless religion. But that sounds maybe a bit too dark. I cried, of course. What got me, and I'm almost going to cry just remembering it, what got me was the fact, and I think that's supposed to be the thing that gets people, the fact that the man who meets the boy at the end, so the stranger that takes, spoiler, huge spoiler, that he actually covers his father with a blanket, because he had no reason to do that other than the fact that he said he would. And he had reason not to do it, but he did it anyway. That really moved me. That is, see, oh my God, I'm this close to tears again. That there's good in the world still, and it's worth fighting for. And the next line I wrote is, his favorite made him fight even better. It's something that comes up again in the Republic. Our fighting side by side with your beloved makes you a better fighter. And then the next thing I wrote on, would you be able to recognize this wisdom when it has become your own? See, in this also, I see the mystics in them. Again, I'm quite sure, well, maybe Plato was playing, because there was a lot of mystery religions in his time. So maybe he's mocking them. Could very well be. Now that makes sense to me now. Maybe that's what he's doing here. He's mocking the mystery religions. That's a possibility, at least. Would you be able to recognize this wisdom when it has become your own? We're kind of raised with the idea that you're not supposed to think yourself wise or good. You need to be humble. And I'm all for humility. I think someone who has no humility is a very ugly thing. But to what extent is that because we think that we were born in sin, which is a very cruel lie. Cruel and hurtful. Hurtful is not the right word. Harmful, thank you. Harmful lie. We should be able to recognize this wisdom when it has become your own. And I wrote down next to it, now I can't remember the exact quote. Who has the right to call themselves gods? And if your answer is no one, then you do not understand deification, theosis. Not at all. Because that takes a shitload of humility. Especially if you say no one because it's only ego-driven, then you really have no clue. The word that jumped out, I can't even remember where, but when I was reading this on the union of God, on the part with deification, the word that jumped out at me was theopiosis, God making, which was the actual Greek that was used, I imagine, in the Greek church, Greek Orthodox. Theopiosis. I like that better than theosis, just theosis. Because why strive to be better? And wise, or strive after wisdom, if we're never allowed to call ourselves such things? It comes back to the medicine. It comes back to exactly that. That it's all about seeing it for what it really is. Honestly seeing yourself, your good and the bad, but also the good, because we really live in a society that we're not allowed to see the good in ourselves. And that's terrible. Completely terrible. There's something more here, but I lost it. With the medicine, the herbs, that is either medicine or poison. Realizing the godness in you, in yourself, can be either medicine or poison. Medicine, if it calls you to greater heights, greater deeds, greater joy, I find it very difficult to, especially lately, to pay heed to the words of people who are bitter and joyless. Unless they can proclaim themselves pessimists, but if they hold themselves up as some sort of guru, then where's the sense in that? I distracted myself, I'm sorry. Medicine, if you use it wisely and to actually become more godlike by acknowledging, by realizing. Rebecca and I use that word constantly as well. That's the one, well, probably more, but that is definitely the most used Vivekian word in all of my friendships. When you realize the God in yourself more and more, realize in the Vivekian sense, just for those who don't know, is realizes and getting that, now I see, now I understand, but also realize in making it real. That's why it's such a good word, right? You find it, you both discover it, and you make it. That's just the perfect word. It's perfect. In that sense, seeing the divine in yourself is good. I think it's obvious to everyone when it's bad. When your ego does become inflated. When you think it is about you. And that's easy to do. Because we're also human. And letting it trip you up, I almost want to say, that's actually the worst thing you can do. Letting it trip you up. I'm not even exactly sure what I mean with that. Maybe you do. Maybe when you become so obsessed with your own godliness that you can't see the godliness of others. I think it's equally bad if you're so obsessed with ignoring your own godliness that you only see the godliness in others. I don't know. No idea what Plato would have made of my interpretation of his text. Clearly, I'm just using him as a springboard, as I was taught not to do. I'm not above breaking the rules. Thank you for your time and attention. That's another thing that John says that's pretty good. Because those are such valuable things. Sophia herself will guide your way.